Good morning, YouTube. We are here with Talking Tuesday. We are here with Joe Itzkowitz. Joe is a paramedic, and Joe is going to be our hero that we're going to be talking with today. All right, so Joe, how are you today?
I'm all right.
All right, good. I'm glad. All right, so we already mentioned that you're a paramedic, so we know you're an essential worker and a first responder. How long have you been doing this?
I've been in EMS for over 20 years now.
Wow, 20 years. Have you ever seen anything like COVID-19 that we went through?
No, nothing like that.
Nothing that comes close to it?
No, I mean, September 11th was pretty difficult on all first responders, but the pandemic of COVID-19, I think, was a lot harder because it was just an overall of everything unknown. I mean, and it dragged out a lot longer than anything else we've ever seen before. And we still don't know enough about it.
Absolutely. So what made you go become a paramedic, become an EMT before that?
So I was actually young in my days, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life, but I had known some EMTs, and I thought that they were pretty cool people, and I wanted to be like them. I wanted to go help people, so I took the EMT class, and then kind of got stuck here, and I just love helping people, and fell into it. And then my wife told me, "All right, time to move up and become a paramedic." So a couple of years ago, I took the paramedic class, and now I'm a paramedic.
Would you be able to sum up your experience with COVID-19?
Um, It's a little bit complicated because, we're responding to emergencies and you're not knowing what you're going to get. And the media tells us one thing, the doctors in the hospital don't really know, but we think that it's one thing. Experiences with speaking with other first responders, seeing a lot of bad stuff out there. And usually when people call EMS, especially in the beginning, it was when there was either a lot of uncertainty and they were scared. So we're dealing with them on their personal views and dealing with individuals just in their fears of life. And then some people were afraid to call because everything was going on. So then by the time the family would call, it would be kind of too late. So especially as a paramedic, we didn't really see the stable patients. The EMTs transported the stable patients to the hospital. We would see the patients that were pretty unstable and unfortunately a lot of cardiac arrests. We were trying to figure out what about it, trying to protect ourselves, worried about our families at the same time. Personally as well, I know that I was scared, but I continued pushing through because I joined this profession to help others. So I continued showing up and going on emergencies to help as many people as I could, even through the fears of the pandemic.
So you mentioned the fears. Were you scared to bring this home with you?
Absolutely. I mean, I have a wife, I've got children, 6 children actually. My oldest is actually asthmatic. In the beginning, we were told that it was a respiratory disease, and my main fear was that my oldest is more susceptible than anyone else, and my baby, who's only a couple months old, would also be susceptible. So I was very afraid to come home with just the carrier of the COVID-19 because if my son, God forbid, were to catch it, I didn't know what to expect. So I kept looking, watching out for him and watching out for myself so that I could protect myself for my children, so I could come home and then continue helping other people as well.
Well, what's the craziest thing you did to try to decontaminate yourself? Did you spray yourself with something?
I would come home, I would like try to derobe as quickly as possible and jump in the shower. And there were times when I would have to wait for my children to be in bed because uh, used to, when I come home from work, my children love running up to me and giving me hugs. But
Right.
I don't want them to get the germs if there were any on me, especially since I didn't know how it was transmitted. So I would have to wait for them to go to bed. Like I said, jump in the shower. There were times when I was taking 3, 4 showers a day, changing my clothing 3, 4 times a day.
What was the mindset every day, donning PPE head to toe, putting on masks, putting on goggles, putting on a respirator? What was your mindset knowing that you're getting up in the morning, you're going out to help people, and this is what you're going to have to do? You're basically essentially putting on a spacesuit to keep yourself safe to go help people. What is that mindset that you have walking out the door in the morning knowing that?
I guess it was just something that I started doing right away. It wasn't a special mindset. When you get dressed in the morning, you put on your clothes for the day. When you go to work, you put on your uniform and you put on your boots. Once COVID happened, my uniform changed. If I were to respond to a fire, I'd be putting on my flame retardant uniform and turnout gear, jacket, boots, and pants, and my helmet. I
Right.
was going out to COVID calls. I would just put on all my PPE, and this was my new uniform. And it was for protection for myself as well as everyone else around me.
Do you think that this particular point, the 3 months where it was like the height, March, April, and May, the height of COVID in New York, do you think that was extra stress on you?
Personally, it was a very stressful time. I had a family member that was actually very sick at that time, and in and out of the hospital with my loved one, my family member, myself. I wasn't sleeping much, and in the beginning of Corona, in the beginning of March actually, I had 3 cardiac arrests in one day. Early morning, I had a baby, and then in the hospital, from the hospital, I ran straight to another cardiac arrest. The baby didn't make it, the adult didn't make it, we went back to the hospital. Then I went to my regular job, that was my volunteer. Then I went to my regular job during the day. That night I was taking my loved one to the hospital, coming back in the middle of the night, responding to another emergency as a volunteer on my way home. Another cardiac arrest, and none of the people were making it, and it was just taking a physical drain on me. And I thought I was just physically exhausted. And then the next week, or later that week and then the following week, I lost my sense of smell and taste. And I realized I started feeling very lethargic and warm, and I took my temperature, and I actually had a fever for 2 days of 103.8. So I did the responsible thing. I stayed home. I didn't take any emergencies. I didn't go to work. I banged out sick. I treated myself with plenty of fluids and Tylenol because I knew that it was a virus, and I worked from home as much as I could. And I just knew that since it is a virus, it's something that body just needs to fight. So as long as I'm being active and continuously drinking fluids, then it was good. On the third day, the fever in the morning was 103.3. So that's when I realized that the fever was starting to come down. I stopped the Tylenol to let my body continue fighting on its own. The following day, it was down to 101. And then by the fourth day, I was able to go back to work because it was at 100 mark. So I was already cleared because healthcare workers were supposed to go back to work at 100. And I realized that even though I had gone through the symptoms, I still had to go out there and continue helping those in need. And a lot of my fellow first responders were staying home. Some of them were mandated to stay home for 2-3 weeks. And we were really short on people on the front lines, so to speak. And the war wasn't going away. The war on this unknown entity. So I'm not going to sit at home and do nothing. I continue going out there. I continue responding to emergencies as many as I could while protecting my family and gowning up for every emergency.
Wow.
And just trying to do what I could. I was at the same time going to do well checks on my other family members, my siblings, my nephews and nieces, people that live in the neighborhood, my neighbors. I just, checking up on everybody. I would do, as a volunteer first responder, I had access to the equipment. So I was going to my brother's house, let's say my brother's house 2-3 times a week for 2 weeks, checking their vital signs, doing an EKG just to make sure he was okay, reinforcing the fact that it's just a virus and he's got to push through this. Because one of my brothers actually had a fever for 3 weeks, him and his wife. I actually, unfortunately, had to send my neighbor to the hospital. I went to the house just to check up on him, and his saturation was in the 70s.
Yeah.
And at that time, it was already in the beginning of April, we knew a little bit more about it. So I told him he's got to go to the hospital. I took him myself, put him in the ambulance, and we went to the hospital. And he ended up being admitted there for 12 days, and then he was discharged. He came home. And he was very appreciative, just the fact that I pretty much forced him to go to the hospital. And that was probably one of the finer points about this whole thing. The fact that I had the experience and therefore I was able to recognize a severe case. And I saved his life. He says that I saved his life. I think I was just, doing my job. He's in his late 70s, actually. And he's home. He went back home. He's we closer than ever before. We were just neighbors before, but now we're actually like friends, so to speak.
So,
and only because of the experiences that beforehand that led me to be able to do this.
right. So stress is a big part of EMS. Every EMT paramedic deals with stress. How did you deal with stress before COVID, and did it change during and after the height of it?
So I deal with stress differently. I like humor.
Right.
Even during COVID, I was just thinking out lots of humor as much as possible, whether I was trying to trick myself or others, but I was just being as friendly and positive as much as possible. I'm a firm believer that whatever I do, it's not of my own strength. And to answer your question, I believe in a higher power. I believe that God runs the world, and I'm just a messenger here to do a job. And at the end of the day, it's God's decision who lives and who dies. And it's my job just to try my hardest. So as that happens, when I don't have a patient that survives, I don't take the blame because I know that I did my best, I tried, and at the end of the day, it was God's decision. And I also don't take credit because I know that it's God's decision. I'm just there to be the messenger. So that's the way I deal with all stress in this field of medicine.
So I know you train new EMTs. Does the training change?
Not really. The training is still the training. We've already trained for this as far as personal protection. We teach you all EMTs on the first day. You got to protect yourself, protect your loved ones, protect your family. Maybe more stress on the washing of the hands and wearing masks and gowns. But we still teach them for everything because just because there's a pandemic going on, that doesn't mean car accidents didn't happen. That doesn't mean people don't have heart attacks or having other sort of medical conditions. Unfortunately, a lot of people were blindsided and just thought everything was corona. But you still got to realize that there are other things that are going on in the world. And you can't let this one thing, as big as it is, you can't let it take over your life and your world. I think it's an important lesson for everyone, especially during the time frame. Unfortunately, a lot of people got stuck there.
Does the chance of a second wave scare you?
I don't really get scared easily. I wouldn't say it scares me. No, I'll be honest. I don't think it scares me. I mean, there's always a second wave. Could be something different or new, something that we're not prepared for. But that's part of the work that we choose. We are first responders. We're the first ones there. We're on the front lines, and we're never prepared. We just do what we got to do. There's an old mantra in EMS that I personally live by. Prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Okay. I live every day, every shift, every emergency like that. You never know what you're going to get. And if the second wave happens, same gowning, fatigues, masks, gloves, hoods, whatever we got to do to protect ourselves, and still worry about the other person, the patient who needs our assistance. That's what I'm really there for.
What do you think about people who refuse to wear a mask in, places that they're with other people? For example, like walking into a restaurant or into a house of worship and they don't want to wear a mask. What do you think about that?
I think that although it is disrespectful, and yes, I say the word respectful, it is disrespectful, everyone's entitled to their own personal beliefs. Some people think it's a political ploy. I heard a lot of people say, oh, come November 4th, we're not going to have to wear masks anymore. I don't know. I mean, does a mask really help? Does it not? Studies say yes, studies say no. What type of masks? I honestly can't give an opinion on that. Some people walking into a place without a mask, they're making a statement. Whether that statement is that they want to be comfortable all around them and they want people to accept them. What happens if someone walks into a place and they're not dressed appropriately for that area? If someone walks into a restaurant, they're not wearing a tie, and it's supposed to be a formal restaurant. The same thing. So they would get kicked out, and just like someone walks into a restaurant without a mask, they would get kicked out. But everyone is entitled to their own personal beliefs. That's what makes the world go round, is everybody is different. We just have to accept everyone the way they are.
You mentioned that it became political. What do you think about a mask becoming political?
Oh, I try not to think about politics. I've heard people say that it's political. Okay. I don't know whether it's political or not. I don't know whether it helps or not. I haven't seen it. Like I said, I was wearing masks when I was responding to emergencies, but I still got sick. I still had symptoms, and I documented my symptoms. So I know that I had most of the symptoms of corona, but I was never actually tested. Right. Just because I had the symptoms. So if I'm finding a virus, I didn't go out and get tested. It was futile to get tested. It was still early on. And then afterwards, I never got tested just because I didn't have any more symptoms. My children have gotten tested, and they all have positive antibodies, and none of them had symptoms. My family is all immune. My neighbors have gotten tested, and most of them have antibodies, and herd immunity has taken on our block. So my kids are still playing with the neighbors. It's like back to regular in our backyards amongst the neighbors, but we spent 5 months in lockdown together. Everyone was home. Everyone's sharing the block. So that's a little bit different than going out where strangers are. I honestly don't know, but if there is a law, there is compliance involved. And again, just try my best. And therefore, when I'm out there, I wear masks. Okay. Some people run red lights. Some people don't wear masks. You can get a ticket for both.
It's necessarily the same thing, but okay. Do you have
Well,
good,
hold on. You're telling me that if you don't wear a mask, someone else can get sick, correct? Allegedly.
that's what
Not
the CDC
necessarily.
says.
The CDC feels that if someone's not wearing a mask, then other people can get sick, correct?
Correct.
And the Department of Transportation feels that if a person runs a red light, then there could be a car accident. Other people can get hurt.
Yes.
There's not always going to be a car accident. That doesn't mean that its potential is not there. Not wearing a mask doesn't mean the other person is not going to get sick, but the potential is there. So it is similar in that respect about the potential. That's all I'm saying. But regardless, this is the law. You don't red lights. So at 2 o'clock in the morning, even if there's no traffic coming, I sit there and I wait for the light to turn green. But then again, you're talking to someone who, when the light has a little red hand, I just stand there and wait. I don't cross the street. I don't jaywalk either. I try to follow the rules. I try to live my life like I would want my children to grow up, following rules, whether we understand them or not.
Okay. Now, do you have anything good, any good story that happened during COVID that we could end with?
Like I told you about my neighbor, his wife had passed away back in January, and it was him and his granddaughter living alone with their dog, and his son had come to take over for his granddaughter. But because I was able to help him, he went back home. She had her grandfather back. He is her world. She lives with him. His daughter had passed away a couple of years ago, and she lives with her grandfather now. It's just the two of them. And I guess because of that, he was able to go home, take care of her. He was very appreciative. He thanked me numerous times in various different ways. But that was the best outcome from most of the emergencies that we had gone on.
All right.
Unfortunately, most of them did not end well.
I know. All right. Well, I want to thank you for having this conversation with us today, being interviewed. You are our first Talking Tuesday interview, so I'm very happy to have you on. I want to thank everybody for watching. Just remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we're done. Peace out.
Oh, wait.
What's up?
Edit this part into the other questions. Thank you. Okay, Sumi, edit this back in, okay? There was one other good thing that happened. I was on an overnight shift with a partner of mine who was fully gowned up, ready for the worst. And I thought he was hysterical because at that point I was wearing a mask, but he was wearing a full headgear. He was wearing a respirator. He was spraying himself with his homemade, what was it called, Sumi? Hand sanitizer spray?
It was not homemade.
What was it?
It was a spray that is clinically proven to fight coronavirus. It is not homemade, and I'm waiting for my 10 years from now where there's going to be a commercial where the lawyer says, "Did you ingest this spray when you were fighting COVID-19?" I'm waiting for that. God forbid it happens, but
Anyway, I had a partner who was fully gowned up like something from a space movie, and I was walking into people's houses with just a regular surgical face mask because the N95 wouldn't even work on this beautiful beard over here. So I have a face mask, and he's fully gowned like some spacesuit. He didn't go anywhere near the patient. I did a full set of vital signs. He was documenting, and why were we there? And I had this conversation. This 50-year-old guy, 3 o'clock in the morning, calls EMS because he's having difficulty breathing. No other way to say it than a panic attack. Why? And I told him straight to his face. I said, let me get this straight. This was exactly the reality, the truth. This is the truth. 3 o'clock in the morning, you wake up to go to the bathroom, and you hear sirens outside. And you hear on the news everyone's dying all around you. And you don't know what to think, and you don't speak to anyone, and you just hear the media, and you hear sirens all day. And and his heart rate's increasing, his blood pressure's going up, and I look at him straight in the eye, and I said, your heart is fine. Your breathing is fine. Your oxygen level's good. Everything medically cleared. I said to him, imagine if those sirens going back and forth are carrying women to the hospital to have babies, or other people calling EMS just because they're nervous. I said, that's what those sirens are for. I said, and everyone's calling EMS in the middle of the night because they're nervous. I said, but if you just imagine that everyone's having babies, you can go to sleep and sleep peacefully. And then we left. He didn't want to go to the hospital, of course. He was okay with that, and I was perfectly fine with it because medically he was fine. But this was a lot of confusion in the beginning that led to this uncertainty and fear by a lot of people. Yeah. But being a first responder, being out there, seeing firsthand what was really going on there, not locked up in my house, I realized that it wasn't as bad as the media was making it sound to be. And then, of course, my partner sprayed himself from head to toe before he got back into the truck. Even though he didn't go anywhere near the patient, he just walked into the house where the windows were open anyway. And that was a fun time also. It was a fun night, my good partner. Am I allowed to say his name?
We all dealt with COVID in our own way, and that was my psychological way of dealing with it. I also would strip on my porch, but that's another point.
So glad I never saw you come home. It was still a fun night.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so Joe, I want to thank you for being our first interview on Talkie Tuesday. Remember, everybody, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and enjoy your day.